The night was meant to be the crowning moment of his empire, a celebration where powerful men sealed powerful deals with a single handshake. But one careless insult shattered everything. He was a billionaire CEO who believed money placed him above everyone else, a man who carried arrogance as if it were a crown, and in his eyes, the waitress serving him was invisible. Yet when he called her stupid in front of a crowd that admired his wealth, the silence that followed cut deeper than any sword. What he did not know was that this so-called ordinary woman was holding a card that could bring his empire down in seconds. One word spoken, one truth revealed, and the man who thought himself untouchable would learn that respect cannot be bought, that power can shift in an instant, and that revenge often wears the face of justice, disguised as fate. The story began on a glittering evening where chandeliers sparkled above a grand hall filled with politicians, investors and business tycoons who had all come to witness the signing of a billion-dollar deal. The CEO entered with the confidence of a king, his laughter booming as cameras followed his every step, capturing the image of a man who thought himself immortal in the world of money. At his table stood a young black waitress, graceful and composed despite the weight of judgmental eyes. She carried herself with quiet dignity, but to him she was nothing more than a servant undeserving of respect. When he hurled the cruel word at her, the room froze. Guests exchanged glances, waiting to see if she would shrink back in silence, but instead her eyes met his, calm yet burning with truth. At that moment the stage was set for the downfall he never expected. The CEO leaned back in his chair, convinced that his insult would pass as easily as smoke in the air, but the silence around him did not fade. Investors shifted uncomfortably, and whispers spread across the hall like a storm building at sea. The waitress stood motionless, her hands steady, her face unshaken, and then she quietly reached into her apron and slipped a folded note onto the table before him. He smirked, believing it to be an apology, another act of submission to his imagined power, but as his eyes scanned the words, his confidence faltered. Written in clean, steady handwriting was a message that struck harder than any insult he could throw. Your empire stands on lies, and tonight the truth will speak louder than your money. Confusion flickered across his face. But before he could crumple the note, a man stepped onto the stage, the lead investor of the $3.5 billion deal. With a cold expression, he raised his voice, recounting the exact words the CEO had just spoken to the waitress. The room grew tense as he declared that no deal could stand where respect was absent, that no fortune was worth aligning with a man who belittled those he considered beneath him. Murmurs turned into gasps, cameras turned their lenses from the CEO's polished smile to the waitress's calm eyes, and in that single shift, the balance of power changed forever. The CEO tried to laugh it off, calling it a misunderstanding, but the weight of his arrogance had already sealed his fate. Investors began withdrawing one after another, their signatures vanishing from contracts that only minutes earlier promised to make him even richer. The man who had walked in as a king now sat stranded, abandoned by those who once praised him. His hand tightened around the note, desperate to control what he could no longer contain. But the true twist came when the waitress finally spoke, her voice steady, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had endured enough. She revealed that she was not simply a waitress, but the daughter of a man whose company had been destroyed years ago by the same CEO's ruthless greed. She had taken the job not for money, but for justice, waiting for the moment when the mask would slip and his arrogance would betray him. The room erupted in stunned silence as the story spread like fire, the cameras recording every word, and the empire he had built on disrespect collapsed before his eyes. In less than an hour, the man who once believed himself untouchable had lost everything, not through force but through the quiet strength of the very person he had tried to humiliate. By the end of the night, the grand hall that once echoed with applause now buzzed with whispers of betrayal and downfall. The billionaire CEO sat hunched at the table that had once been his throne, his fortune slipping away faster than he could comprehend, his allies gone, his reputation shattered beyond repair. Across the room, the waitress who had been called stupid stood tall, her calm expression unshaken, her dignity intact, her revenge complete. She had not raised her voice. She had not begged for justice. She had simply let truth reveal itself, and that truth had burned brighter than all the lights in the hall. As the cameras captured his broken figure and her unbending strength, the world was reminded that money cannot buy respect, cruelty cannot silence dignity, and power will always shift to those who stand for what is right. That night, justice wore her name.